Hey, how's it going? This is Jimmy from Cruise FM. Welcome to the Jedi Jimmy podcast. If you don't know what the Jedi Jimmy podcast is, this is me talking about Star Wars and nothing but. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Some people call me a super nerd. Right now, I'm actually doing a review of Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace. The release of that movie was May 19th, 1999. That was the release date here in Canada. The original box office was $1.046 billion. The original budget was $1.15 million. So it was these movies that really started to kick up a notch when it came to Star Wars making money, and the reason why Disney ended up buying them. The timeline of this one is actually 32 BBY. So that's 32 years before A New Hope. The reason why they go BBY, it's before the Battle of Yavin. And anything after A New Hope is after the Battle of Yavin. ABY, in case you cared. Okay, so the upcoming Acolyte, actually the new series coming out on Disney Plus in June, is 100 years before A Phantom Menace. So it's way before this. So when this movie was originally released, I was still living in Tabor, and my best friend and I went to go see the movie in the theater with his girlfriend at the time, who they are now married. They've actually been married since that summer, which is kind of cool. I realized that this weekend. Comments about the characters and development. There was a lot more Jedi in this movie. This was the height of the Republic. And we see a young Obi-Wan Kenobi and his master Qui-Gon Jinn. We're introduced to Jar Jar Binks. I think he was kind of met as comic relief, but he was annoying. He's in all the prequel movies. That's the only downfall to these. Padme Amidala, she's the queen. Now, she's a lot older than Anakin, who is played by Jake Lloyd. Natalie Portman, during this movie, was 16, and Jake Lloyd was 8. So there's a huge age difference, and for them to have a relationship later on is kind of little weird. It's 8 years different. But again, I'm 50. Who am I to judge? You know, Qui-Gon wanting to train Anakin was very significant, because I think if Qui-Gon would have trained Anakin, if he didn't die in this movie, could have totally changed the whole how these movies worked. Now, the fact that they brought up midichlorians in this movie was kind of weird, because I thought they were going to go somewhere with it, because they were talking about Anakin having the highest midichlorian count of any Jedi. This was the only time it was brought up. Other than this, it was brought up in The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch when referencing the M count. So, which, if you don't know what midichlorians are microscopic organisms that work symbiotically with the human beings to help them link to the Force, to make them more knowledgeable of the Force and be able to talk to the Force. Qui-Gon mentions it in the movie for sure. Battle scenes. The space battles were very extensive, like the Royal Cruiser going against the droid control ships. There's a lot more different starships in this one. Like, as I said, the Queen's starship is the J-Type 327 Nubian Royal Starship. The N-1 Starfighter, which is the Naboo Starfighter. But in the Disney series, The Mandalorian, he actually has an N-1 Starfighter. There's the droid starfighters and all that kind of stuff. Now we get into the lightsaber scenes. These are the best lightsaber scenes of any movie so far in the Star Wars universe. I actually am ranking these as my top 2. let's go into first. Let's go Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan when they're battling against the droids. All the impressive techniques they're using, jumping from using the Force to using the lightsaber, both in deflecting and in striking against the droids. Then we get into the Jedi versus Sith. First, Qui-Gon Jinn against Darth Maul on Tatooine. Maul only engaged one side of his double-bladed lightsaber, but both of them used Form 4 of lightsaber combat, Ataru, which is more flips, spins, fancy footwork, all that kind of stuff. It was very realistic. They were going to hurt or kill. Most of their strikes were toward their heads. So you see a lot of head blocks and ducks and stuff like that. It was awesome. They were pretty equal until Qui-Gon fled when he jumped onto the fleeing starship. Now, the battle between Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul was very chaotic because Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon were just going randomly. They didn't have any plan when going after Darth Maul, so Maul used a lot of kicks and force moves, separating them throughout the battle, which was still pretty good. But when they finally got separated and Qui-Gon went against Maul alone, Maul used some quick techniques, but he also used his speed. He was younger than Qui-Gon. He's an older Jedi, and he ended up killing Qui-Gon. But when Obi-Wan basically went back for revenge, like to avenge his master, the sequences were faster. The techniques, the counters, Qui-Gon, Darth Maul using both sides of his blade, attacking Obi-Wan from the front, from the back, and top and bottom. They were both moving so fast. It was awesome. I've actually learned how to do some of those techniques. It is cool. Now, what ended up happening is Obi-Wan got disarmed and he was knocked into kind of a pit. He was hanging there. But when he was able to get out of the pit and he grabbed Qui-Gon's lightsaber, he actually used a technique that was banned by the Jedi Order because, again, remember, the Jedi look at the Force and the way that they look at using the lightsaber for knowledge and defense, never for attack. But the technique that Obi-Wan used is banned because he cut Maul in half. And you'll find later on in the movies, such as in Revenge of the Sith, he uses another banned technique, and I will explain that when I review that. Special effects were awesome. Again, a lot of CGI in these movies. There was a lot of that kind of stuff. You can tell camera angles. The pod race was awesome. I know from seeing a lot of the behind the scenes, they used a lot of models and stuff like that. But there is some CGI, some really cool stuff. The space battles, again, Anakin, flying through the control ship. There's a lot more CGI. Yoda was mostly CGI. Jar Jar Binks and C-3PO were used as motion capture. So there was some CGI, but they had people that were standing in for them in the scenes. Again, special effects, awesome. One of my favorite quotes of all times from this movie is, "Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering." Now, let's review the lightsaber scenes. I gave them a 2 out of 6. 1 being good. So, again, I gave it a 2, so it's not quite the best one. And the movie rating of the 6 movies done by Lucas, this is my 3rd favorite, so it's 3 out of 6. May the Force be with you, always.
Keep your concentration here and now where it belongs.
But Master Yoda said I should be mindful of the future.
But not at the expense of the moment. Be mindful of the living Force, young Padawan.